telling a story to the rest of the world saying we are trade savvy. So when we are wanting people to look at us from outside, we are saying three very important things, at least the Prime Minister is. He's saying we are tech, we're talented, we can do a lot of stuff, and we are tech savvy. Now the one which I don't agree with. Hey, I've done something wrong here. He brought in this word tradition. I think he was playing to internal publics. Now whether we are tradition or we are not really tradition, actually doesn't fit into the definition of that brand profile that we're talking about. Now I will, when I come a little later, talk about how you can marry tradition with technology and modernism, and the best example for that is a country I adore. I've been to 200 times, Japan. So steeped in tradition, yet so phenomenally technological. But when we are defining our contours of brand India, I am not sure whether tradition at least fits in for external communication. Right? And the last of the words which he used was tourism. Now, it must be part of our various plans. Also good for people to come to India. But those three first points, tech, talented, trade savvy, and tourism, are disconnects. I'll come back to this also. Because tourism is a very essential story. I was in Budapest last week. Hungary is a country of 10 million people. 10 million people. 30 million tourists. Now, it can fundamentally redefine the contours of where your economy moves. But when we are putting out a definition, because if you don't get the definition right, you're not very clear where exactly you're headed, then you can be muddlesome. Now, you've got smart managers here. Not everybody in the government is equally smart. They're all babus. Right? So we can excuse them. But fact of the matter is, if we refocus, and we say they got some of the stuff jumbled up, we're going to stay with the first three things. Tech, talented, trade savvy. Okay? So far, some agreement on that? Okay. We still have that vote we put up and said, does Make in India, make brand India? I'm not sure. So we're going to come back to that. We said all of this. The one thing I want to reiterate again is that what is a brand? A brand is a collection of perceptions. Now, Prime Minister Modi can say what he feels like. He can go back, address a million Indians somewhere. But the question we've got to intrinsically ask ourselves is, does the ordinary Joe on the roads of New York or of Tokyo actually either understand or appreciate, or worse still, give a damn about what Prime Minister Modi says? Right? Now, in that perspective, I'm going to take you back to something I did when I used to run this agency called Dentsu. Dentsu, by the way, is the world's single largest advertising agency. They are Tokyo headquartered. They market the World Olympics. They also market the FIFA World Cup. They also sell, they have the marketing rights for the Asian Games. So big, huge agency, and I was the India JV partner for both for India and the Middle East from 2003 to 2011. Since our biggest constituency of business was Japan, I used to handle Toyota, Honda, Maruti, which was Suzuki, Yamaha, Honda two-wheelers, Canon, Panasonic, Sony, every conceivable Japanese brand. It is important for me to know what do people in Tokyo actually think about India, right? So I'm taking an extract out of a presentation I made to the Japan Management Association some years ago, in 2010. So first is the perception of India among students at universities in Japan. Important? These are young kids like you. First feedback. Can you see it? One word, far. Now, I used to have a dozen Japanese expats based here working for me in India. So I asked them, I said, what do you mean by far? It's already 8-hour flight. But in their minds, India is very far. Now, far doesn't mean anything. All of you have been taught in marketing top of mind awareness. TOMA. Yes? Teachers teach you in class top of mind awareness. Far here is actually not the distance. It is the fact that we are not top of mind to graduates in universities in Japan. Why is it important to me? Because those are the guys we're going to do business with 5 years down the line. All of you guys are going to do business with those guys 5 years, 10 years down the line. So first perception, far. Second perception, populated. What they mean is they think we're very crowded. You know, in fact, I told you we had at one time peak 18, at least 12 Japanese working for me. As part of the joint venture agreement, I used to have to pay them hardship allowance. So I argued with my counterpart in Japan. I said, what the hell are you talking about hardship allowance here? I said, I'm giving these guys round the clock 2 drivers, each 12 hours, so that they don't have to drive. Each of them have been given guards outside their residences. We've given them, maids, we give them house help, we give them everything. What are you talking about hardship allowance? So this guy looks at me very intently. He says, Sandeep-san, your country have no pavements. It's a very basic perspective. Fact of the matter is, the Japanese are used to walking. I mean, they leave home at some early hours, they walk to the tube station, take the tube station, get into Tokyo, walk again to office. The comfort of giving him a driver round the clock to ferry him to office is no comfort. That he cannot walk to office on a pavement is hardship. It's perception. Again, we keep going back to that one word, perception. You know what? Again, I'm meandering. Biggest hardship. I go into a supermarket, and a lot of them used to live, in the Vasant Vihar area. They go to Modern Bazaar, and they can't find Japanese food. Hardship. My perception of the country is dictated by the fact that I cannot buy sushi at Modern Bazaar. You know what? Once a quarter, I had to allow my Japanese expatriates to fly at company cost with families to Singapore or to Bangkok just to buy food. Biggest heartbreak. For those of you who would find time, buy a copy of my book, Konjo. I have a full chapter on it. I come into work one early morning, I have this very senior colleague, he's in tears. So I said, what's wrong with you? What is it, Fukada-san? What do you want? So he says, Sandeep-san, I got big problem. I said, big problem? Normally, Japanese don't tend to get agitated. But this was a big problem. So I said, what happened? He said, I go to Thailand, I order food, I bring back Japanese eggs. So I said, so? So he said, Indian custom impound my Japanese eggs. So I said, first and foremost, Fukada-san, an egg is an egg. How does it make a difference? Japanese eggs. He said, no. Japanese egg different. I want Japanese egg. He had brought 120 eggs from Japan. And because there are live embryos or whatever, I don't understand their technology, the import of eggs is not allowed. So they got impounded at customs. Now for you to understand, this is not an exaggeration. Many years ago, the guys in Thailand decided we make fantastic rice. We eat rice, the Japanese eat rice. The rice we produce costs 1 rupee. Japanese rice costs 100 rupees. Let's produce in Thailand, let's produce rice and we'll sell it in Japan. So they put a huge amount of acreage to Japanese sticky rice. How many of you eaten Japanese food? Yeah, sticky rice. In India, they look at that and say, this is useless, this is sticky. We've got basmati. But the Japanese want to eat sticky rice. So the Thai government, big plan, big everything, produced sticky rice and took it to Japan. Big hoopla, big advertising, big lots of stuff happened. Not a single box of Thai sticky rice moved from the shelves. You know why? The Japanese would pay 100 rupees to buy Japanese rice, but would not buy Thai rice at 50 rupees. He wanted sticky rice. Same thing here. The eggs got stuck. Now, as chairman of the company, I left every other job and we got into this whole damage control on trying to get the eggs out. Now, Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed, everything we tried with custom. Custom said, normally आपको कुछ भी लाने देते हैं. ये eggs नहीं आएंगे. Fukada-san was in tears, and I am telling you tears. So they are reading from pavements to food, populated, read crowded. Interesting word. Third one which I am putting out, mystic. Interesting word. When I did the Japanese translation back to mystic, you could read that as traditional or religious, but not exotic. Now, exotic has value. Traditional and religious may also have value, but not as much value. So I asked some of the youngsters we had working for us. I said, well, what do you think about backwaters in Kerala? Would that not be classified to be exotic? And this is where I'm going to pull you back to that discussion we had on that word tourism. I'm going to come back to it again. The moment we run those, well, we spend a lot of money as Government of India promoting this idea called Incredible India. My first quarrel, of course, is the word incredible. Not everybody understands whether incredible is good or bad, whether incredible is positive or negative. Is incredible outside of the realm of imagination and therefore good? Or is it just a rhyme with I and I, therefore Incredible India? Right? But the moment we start showing, for example, backwaters of Kerala, we start competing with Honolulu, we start competing with all the very, very fancy, sea-focused destinations that you could talk about. Now, is our water as blue? Is our sand as pure? Is it as golden? Is it as white? Then we get into those areas. We're going to come back to that. So mystic in their mind has not translated to exotic despite very many posters we may have put up about backwaters of Kerala. Sorry. The last of the words that I had there, the word they use, and I think they're being polite, is this area upcoming. Now upcoming is not what teacher said to you in class and said can do better. Upcoming actually in simple state words means we are still third world. So we've got a long way to go. Right? Now let's contrast that. To perception of India amongst business leaders in Japan. Now this is different. This is the guys I was dealing with every day. What do they first say to you? First thing they tell you, happy, very happy, think huge. So you read large market. But the next thing they say to you is difficult. Now, I didn't want to explain that. It could be the pavement, it could be the eggs, it could be the sticky rice, it could be just us, the government, the ease of doing business. So second most important thing after saying we're big and large and therefore a huge opportunity is maybe that huge opportunity comes with a lot of question marks. Cheap. Now, is cheap a good word? Any volunteer? Cheap. We believe we're a good value for money market. The Japanese believe we're a cheap market. Cheap market. Now what does cheap mean? Please understand that. Except for Maruti, which is actually more an Indian brand and Suzuki was a secondary brand till the Suzuki guys took over, no Japanese car manufacturer after that has actually made a dent. Toyota hasn't made a dent, except one car which I launched, the Innova, and we talk about that some other day. Honda, except the city, nothing else succeeded. Nissan, dead. Datsun, dead. Yes? You know what is the problem? The moment your perception, again the word is perception, it is a cheap market, what do you compromise with? you compromise with the fits and finishes of the product that you send to India. You know, that is what happened with Panasonic. I made these presentations to Panasonic, to Sony, to Toshiba, to Hitachi. And I said, because in your mind the word you had was cheap, you sent us inferior product. The Koreans thankfully interpreted cheap as good value for money. Look at what happened with LG and Samsung. You understand? It's a question of what is your perception. So what is the stimulus? Therefore, what will be the response? So word cheap, actually very, very damaging if I say perception. Last good word they have to say about us. So they come here, they meet us, they actually look at all of you and say we are a young country. Now you must again understand, the word young comes from a context. They are an old country, you know, every other second guy in Japan is now above 40 years of age and half their country is getting into 60 years plus. So the age dividend is on the negative side. So when they look at themselves and they compare, young becomes very important. I travel to Europe, again they define us as young. So when we are building Brand India, one of you becomes part of the Brand India team with the Prime Minister's office or somewhere else, remember the most important, nicest, positive word that we have going for us is the word young. Right? Now let's go across the other end of the world. Perception of Indians among students at universities in the US. Now again, you must understand, it is all born out of experience or lack of experience. When we said far for the Japanese students, we said you are not top of mind, therefore they don't know much about you. Now this is not true for universities in the US, because 1/3 of the class in every university these days could well be Indian. Right? So what do they say? They don't say Indians are smart. They say India is smart. Actually they mean Indians are smart. Now, why are they smart? I have a niece, she got a 2400 on 2400 SAT score. I have a boy in my office who just wrote the GMAT, 800 on 800 score. Now in every university, whether it is Princeton or it's Harvard or wherever, the word smart defines the Indian and therefore defines the India. Tech. Every bright IITian headed out to the US, every bright Indian in the valley is contributing to that brand called India. Smart, tech, aggressive. Now that's a beautiful word. For me as a marketeer, that's a beautiful word. I mean, they don't say it with love, but I love it. Right? The downside of the word aggressive is pushy. But the reason I put this out is to tell you that because you have Indians sitting in their midst, competing with them, perhaps beating them on a daily basis, the smartest startups are coming out of the valley, pushed by Indians, and you have the Pichais and the whatever, taking helm at Google and Microsoft and so on and so forth. So you are certainly smart and you are tech and you are aggressive. Of course, we don't like you, so you're pushy. Right? Let's change gears. Let's go to see what their corporate bosses have to say about us. Business leaders in the US. They say India is huge. The Japanese said we're large. Right? Now, they said cheap. The Americans, despite the fact that General Motors failed completely without a trace in this country, they said we are low price, low yield. And in the last few years, the Americans have come back. They've come back. The one comeback of America, if they ever write the history of America again, the comeback of America was the iPhone. It actually started with everything that Apple did, but in the last 10, 12, 15 years. But the comeback of America was the iPhone. And with the comeback of America with the iPhone came Facebook, came Twitter, came all of these things which have invaded our lives on a daily basis. You can't live without WhatsApp, you can't live without Facebook, you can't live without Google, you can't live without any of those things today. Yes? And America has never had so much of mind share in this country or in the world in the last 200 years. Right? What is Google doing today? If you closely watch Rajan Anandan, their India country head, or you look at Facebook, or you look at what Twitter is doing in this country, they have figured out something the Japanese didn't, that we are a low price, low yield market. So you mean low price, returns might be, so what they sell for $1, for example, in any other part of the world, sells for 10 cents in India, but you can sell 20 units of 10-cent items and therefore make double the amount of revenue. Smarter thinking. Again, they say, we're young. And perhaps, again, a throwback from what the university guys are saying and all those tech and smart and, kids in Columbia and UPenn and wherever else are saying, we're innovative. Have you got some picture now? You started to see that, when you see the world through different eyes and different sets of people, brand India looks different. Now, separately someday I come back, we'll spend 2, 3, 4 hours maybe just chatting about what do we want brand India to be. Now, this is where I'm going to take the tourism example that I talked about earlier. We want lots of foreigners to come into India. And I'm not going to get into an Uber controversy or there is, problems with security or perceived this or that. I think we have a marketing problem. Our understanding of brand sometimes becomes an issue. So let me spend just a minute or two explaining that. I took that example of backwaters of Kerala, right? And we of course say God's own country and so on and so forth. Resonates very well when you say that in India. But somebody coming from, say, Germany, why does he head to Phuket? And he doesn't head to Kerala. Again I told you, the water is bluer, the lagoons are cleaner, the sand is more white. More importantly, even though the food may be the same, we might talk about the way we make Kerala fish and whatever. Seafood is abundant. Nightlife is good. What do they communicate? The picture that you see of Phuket has white sand, golden sand, whatever sand, azure blue waters, nothing else. That's all they want to communicate. Where do we make the mistake? We put the palms, we show some driblet of water, then we get that little boat there. On the boat there's a dark looking chap who's rowing the boat. Unnecessary visual clues which are not adding to value. So they distract from what I take from that picture. Now, that was the background. Instantly anywhere in the world, anybody who knows India and you ask him, India, what is the first thing they say? The Taj. Yes, no? What is the one thing we have the world doesn't have? Now there is no comparison between sands and waters and colors and whatever. We have the Taj, nobody else has the Taj. We have the Taj and it is an undisputed wonder of the world. Now, if the Prime Minister, and he won't, were to make me in charge of actually selling tourism, I would use only one picture, one singular message. I don't want people to go to Kerala. This becomes democracy again. We want people to go to Kerala, we want people to go to Orissa, we want people also to go to Punjab, we want everybody to go everywhere because that is the compulsion of our democracy. Actually, from the standpoint of somebody in Japan or somebody in Hungary or somewhere in Europe, you want to bring them here, they all first want to go to the Taj. There is only one Taj. There is no comparison to anybody else. Now, I was in Peru last year, visiting a place called Machu Picchu. Many of you heard of it? It may break your heart, but it is true. Machu Picchu attracts 1,000% more tourists than the Taj. More importantly, I paid $100 to go inside Machu Picchu. I mean, I don't want to sound disparaging, but India would have at least 100 Machu Picchus dotted across the country. But what do? They actually market Machu Picchu. They market one image. They market one shot of Machu Picchu, and that looks fabulous. Who do they market it to? They market it primarily to the US. From the US, it's a 4.5-hour flight. What do they also say? We got beautiful hotels. They have beautiful hotels. They cost $800. What do they market? They say we got beautiful train connections. The train journey of 2.5 hours cost me $200. So they're making money hand over fist with something we have 100 of, and where we have only one, which is the Taj. In India, we should be spending $1 billion, $2 billion, $10 billion, $100 billion on only one thing in this country. It is the Taj. Every other politics of tourism has to go out of the window. You got to get them into Agra, you got to get them into Taj, make them feel happy, and then have another 3, 4, 5, 6 days. They'll go off to Delhi, they'll go off to Jaipur, wherever they go off to. It doesn't matter. So, what do we want brand India to be? You got to have that one word, that one picture in your mind, and let that stick. I think I've done my quota of time, huh? Have I? I'll start to wind down this presentation. I swear by this model. Someday when you have time, I will take you through it. It belongs to a company called Young and Rubicam that I used to work for. They have this fabulous brand framework called the Brand Asset Valuator, BAV. I just picked this chart from there. What it talks about is that a brand is actually built on 4 pillars. Those pillars are differentiation, relevance, which together contribute to creating brand strength, which is brand strength or brand vitality. And there is esteem and knowledge, which contribute to brand stature. When you put the 4 of them together, they actually give the brand its one asset, which is itself. Now, I could have taken many more examples, but go back to that whole discussion we had about tech. Remember tech? And when he was reading it out, he said, mass customization is what we want to do. We want to make in India and so on and so forth. Now that is where, when everybody said, I agree, I want make in India, will make brand India. And I said, I disagree. I am going to go to the contrary. I am going to spend a minute explaining to you why I disagree. What is the one differentiation we had? At least 10, 15 years ago, we started to break free from the rest of the world. What we said, we provide, backroom services to the world. So we started providing call centers and so on and so forth. Fact of the matter is, at the year 2000, when the world was supposed to collapse because the computers would all fold up, India found a new salvation, and that salvation was software. We started writing or rewriting the software for the entire world, telling them we are averting this catastrophe of the year 2000, where computers will not recognize whether we have moved into a new millennium. Now, that is where we had that one inflection point where we could have repositioned brand India. We could have moved from being those backroom guys who were taking the odd nightly calls sitting in faraway India into a differentiation was built on technology. If you look at it, fundamentally TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Cognizant, all of these companies fundamentally changed in shape, size and magnitude around the year 2000. Where we lost out? We did not emphasize that differentiation. Why did the differentiation not happen? Infosys grew 10 times, TCS grew some 20 times, all that was fine. The relevance element of it never got created. What is relevance? Relevance is, on my phone I have Twitter, I have Facebook, I have Google, I have WhatsApp. Yes? But do I have Tata consultancy, or do I have Infosys, or do I have Wipro on my phone? Moral of story, we were in the same business, we did not create consumer products. We did not create brands that kissed, hugged consumers. So the story of brand differentiation and brand relevance got lost. And that impacted the other two pillars. Esteem. I mean, the guys who know TCS, but the guys who don't know TCS don't give a damn. Knowledge. Everybody thinks, at least, they know Facebook. Sorry for the time. But my knowledge of Google, my knowledge of Facebook outstrips my knowledge of TCS or Infosys or any of our Indian technology companies 1,000,000:1. Right? So we couldn't create that brand asset for India because sigma of TCS, Cognizant, Infosys, etc., etc., etc. would have added up to a brand called Tech India. So we somewhere in that game we lost it out. Important to know, important to understand, important to imbibe. You must build differentiation. It has to have relevance. That will contribute to esteem. And if you have personal knowledge, you got a fantastic property. You can't in a management school not have these very complicated diagrams. But the reason I'm putting it here, if you have brand strength on your y-axis and you have brand stature on your x-axis, there's one country where I've seen somebody manage the brand at a fantastic level. Brand is called Israel. Many of you in this room may or may not be familiar. If you have the time, the energy, and I'd request the professors here to prescribe a book called The Startup Nation to everybody in this business school. The Startup Nation. You know, Israel was born about the same time India was born. If you look at the world map, honestly tell you can't find them. They're about maybe a little larger than the Union Territory of Delhi. I mean, in Israel, if you don't apply the brakes fast enough, you'll go into Palestine. Yeah? But it is a country, by the way, which did not have a common language because people came from 100 countries. They suddenly found utopia and went to Israel. So they had to dig out an old language called Hebrew so that everybody could at least talk the same language. If somebody was talking Czech and somebody was talking Russian and somebody else was talking some other language, they came from different parts of the world. The only thing they had in common, they were all Jews, but couldn't speak the same language. So it is a country which didn't even have all people from the same country. Right? Today, it may surprise most of you to know, outside of the United States of America, the maximum number of patents, technology patents filed is from Israel. It is not from Japan, it is not from China, it is not from Singapore. It is from Israel. The biggest R&D plant in the world for Intel is Israel. The biggest development center for Microsoft in the world, not counting people in terms of output, is Israel. Dell, Google, Facebook, Twitter, everybody, the most cutting edge ideas in the world are actually not coming out of Silicon Valley, they are coming out of Israel. I'm doing a lot of business today, trying to find partners out of Israel. What they are doing today, we will not be able to develop in this country, I'm telling you, in 20 years. You know where does it come from? They are the world's most attacked nation. The whole world is trying to fight them. Yes? Yeah. So what do? In self-defense, they build the most fantastic security systems. Then 5 years later, because military service is intrinsic to that country, it's compulsory, the guys who developed those security systems go out. So when they go out, they know how to develop systems that are going to beat the security systems that they developed for the army. So the guys in the army now out to the guys who have already left and are finding antidotes to the technology they developed, and they go to the next higher level. Now that is technology. So what do we want to be seen as brand India? We'll leave that discussion to a later time. This is what I think the Prime Minister wants, but I can't really be 100% sure. But he wants us to move from this left-hand side top quadrant of being niche or unrealized potential into a leadership position in 2020. Now, if you ask me, for that to happen, some simple things have to be done. This is my last slide. First, before we do anything, we got to first ask, whom are we talking to? Are these the university grads in Tokyo or the university grads in the US? Are we talking to business leaders? Are we talking to tourists? Next inevitable question, where are we in their minds? More importantly, where do we want to be? Last but not the least, how do we get there? In all the 30 years I've been in advertising, building brands, I've had the privilege of launching some of India's biggest and best brands, including Airtel. I launched that brand from a scratch, and I feel very proud every time I see one holding up on the street. Of course, I do a lot of work with Airtel. You look at brand India, you look at any brand. Intrinsically, the only thing I want to tell you, I want to leave behind with you, is 4 questions. When you're talking about brands, you go for an interview, you go and meet a future employer, go and meet a future client, writing a plan. 4 questions. Whom are we talking to? Please get that right. If you don't know who you're talking to, you cannot have a universal audience. There's no such thing as a universal audience. Where are we in their minds? We figured grads in Tokyo versus grads in the US, completely different understanding of the same guy. Where do we want to be? We still haven't articulated to ourselves, do we want to be mass customization? That is the deathbed of anything you can ever do. Mass customization is zero value boss. The Chinese did it, they're moving out, they want to be in our space, we're trying to get into their space. This could be more stupid than that, not the area of my discussion today. How do we get there? Now we got the first 3 questions right, the how do we get there can become more focused. Right? Thank you very much for being a fantastic audience. Any questions you may have, if you have the time, I'd be quite happy to answer them to the best of my ability. I think there are no questions, so I can be let off the hook. I can go back to work. Okay, one last time. Any questions? No questions. Dean, thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.